call the August 6th Stormwater Management Commission meeting to order. My name is Kabir Sandhu, serving as chair of this commission, and we have a relatively full agenda today. It's customary that our first order of business is, well, are there any elected officials in the audience today? Raise your hand. I know we were expecting one. Is that? Okay. We'll recognize her when she arrives, and it may be during a case. Well, the first order of business is to review or amend and approve our meeting minutes and decision letters from our last case. The commissioners have received those in advance, and I'll entertain a motion when anyone's ready.
I need to abstain because I missed.
Great. Ms. Camp will abstain.
And I had to leave early, so you don't have a quorum.
You did have to leave early before we voted. Yeah. So, legal, how would you like for us to handle that?
Trying to look at the commission's general rules. I don't know if it's a majority of those present and voting or general rules, but those can just, if the council or the commission can't take action, they would just be on the next meeting.
I hate to delay the decision letters for some of those cases unless you think that's okay, Logan.
We can move to the first action item, and I can, before the end of the meeting, let the board know.
Okay. All right. All right. Well, we'll move on to cases to be heard. The first case to be heard today is Starwood Phase 1. I'd like the applicant to come to the desk here with a microphone, and while that's being done, I'll let Logan introduce the case.
Opening statement to the applicant. If you are not satisfied with the decision made by the Stormwater Management Commission, you may appeal the decision by filing for a writ of certiorari with the Davidson County Chancery or Circuit Court. Your appeal must be filed within 60 days of the date of the Commission's decision. You are advised to seek the independent advice of legal counsel to ensure that your appeal is filed in a timely manner and that all procedural requirements have been satisfied. Case number 1 on the agenda, case 2026-00011, Starwood Phase 1, 3839 Murfreesboro Pike. APN is 164-0000-4100. Inspectors NPDES, Council District 32, Joy Stiles. Applicant's request, encapsulating Stream 3 on site to improve flow conveyance across the site, permanently filling 2 development-made wetland areas, disturbance within stream buffer to allow for necessary vehicular access onto Old Hickory Boulevard. Appellant is Hobson Pike Land, LLC, represented by Kimley Horn. Comments, Stormwater staff. MWS staff has worked with the applicant on a mitigation proposal that includes tree planting above TDU requirements, expansion of stream buffers, and pervious pavement. Codes, no comment provided. Planning, no comment provided. Greenways is not requesting a greenway or greenway easement.
Great, thank you. And I see Councilperson Stiles has arrived, and we always like to recognize them before we start cases. Ms. Stiles, would you like to say any words before we begin with Starwood? I want to give you that opportunity. Great. All right.
So this is the first time that I've been to this meeting. Good morning. Thank you, commissioners, for serving. Mishu, always a delight. So the most important thing that I can say is we are now behind. So I need Starwood to get started. And we had a meeting about this months ago. So this could have made it here a lot sooner. I would love for you to see this plan, understand the legacy of this plan, and let them move forward so I can start grading on the site. What we have coming to the site is going to be an opportunity for the community across Antioch and, of course, across the city to be able to come back on that site for restaurants, a new performance venue, and housing. So please vote yes. Mishu, thank you. Please. You guys have a great day. I'm literally here just to say what I just said. So have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Councilperson Stiles. Always good to see our council folk here, and hope you enjoy this this experience is your first time. So with that, I'll give a little bit of a rundown of how we handle these cases. You'll have 10 minutes to present your case, but I'd like for you all to introduce yourselves, and then I'll start the clock after that. I'll give you a 2-minute warning. At that point, we will close the applicant's hearing and we'll open it up for public comment. If there's anybody here to speak in favor or against, I'd like for them to come to the podium and they'll have 10 minutes to speak. We'll close public hearing and then we'll have some probably back and forth to you all as we work towards a motion. And so with that, do you have any questions? Okay.
Can y'all hear me all right? All right,
Got you now.
here we go.
You finish your statement.
Yeah, I did.
All right. With that, I'll let you all introduce yourselves and we'll start the clock after that.
Yeah, absolutely. Good morning, everyone. My name's Redmond Wallace. I'm with Kimley Horn, representing the civil engineer on the project.
My name is Tim Aguilar. I'm with Link Logistics, the applicant on the project. Thank you, commissioners, for hearing the application tonight. We are extremely excited to be here. This is a project we are very focused on. I oversee our East Coast development, and we are excited to deliver this project in the market. It's one of the strongest industrial markets in the country right now, and I think we're going to be able to provide a great product. And then on the future phases that you'll see down the road on the residential and the retail component. Thank you.
My name's Josh Rowland with Kimley Horn. I'm the landscape architect of record, and we'll be sharing some of the details of our mitigation measures.
And I'm Andrew O'Malley from Link Logistics. Just want to echo what Tim said. Very excited to be here. I think this is our second time. Steve, nice to see you again. Very, very excited to get a project done here. I think we've got a pretty good package that Kimley's put together for you guys, and excited to talk about it.
Great.
Thanks.
Great. Thank you. I'll go ahead and start your clock now.
Okay, right on. So I'll start with a brief introduction of where we're at in Davidson County. So we're at the southeast corner of Davidson County, southeast corner of Hobson Pike, which is planned left, and Murfreesboro Pike, which is to the north of the site, the existing Starwood Amphitheater. So I'll go into the project description as a whole. As mentioned, this is a 3-phase development, an industrial zone, a retail zone, and a residential zone. So this is the plan that was approved at preliminary SP in November of 2025. The industrial area on the east part of the site, the residential area on the west, and the retail part facing Murfreesboro Pike on the north. This phase 1 grading permit is just for the industrial part of the site, the east part of the site, as well as mass grading for phase 2 and 3, as well as any associated stormwater control measures, public utility improvements that have to serve the overall development. And so this is a site plan just depicting that kind of phase 1 nature, mass grading the other 2 phases. So backing up a little bit to an aerial before the Starwood Amphitheater closed. The Starwood Amphitheater closed in 2007. So this is from 2004, fully functioning, well maintained. And as we move through future, it closed in 2008. And so this is kind of the site being unmaintained through, and then the development west of Hobson Pike, you'll see to the site, has added some additional flow to wetlands and streams that we'll talk about in the future. So that is the site today. So this is a map of the HD done by our environmental engineer and now accepted by TDEC. On the right, you'll see wetland 1 at the northeast corner of the site, which is a former drainage swale for the Starwood Amphitheater that has now been deemed a wetland. I will note that there was a HD done in 2008 that had no wetlands or streams on site, and as the site has been unmaintained and additional development in the area has added flow, it's created these wetlands in the stream 3 that is encapsulated within wetland 1. The pink line that goes from wetland 1 to wetland 2 is a pipe that is supposed to take the drainage from wetland 1 to wetland 2 and eventually to the outfall west of the site. This pipe is broken and there's no flow currently coming out of the pipe into wetland 2. So somewhere along that pink dashed line, there's a break in the pipe and the water is infiltrating into the ground. So we have wetland 2 on the west part of the site, which is a sedimentation basin that formerly served the Starwood Amphitheater. And then on the south part of the site is stream 1 and 2, which has been identified by TDEC. So now this is a site just of the existing conditions and kind of reorienting ourselves. Hobson Pike is now at the top of the page. Murfreesboro Pike is on the plan right of the page. So we have wetland 1 up top and wetland 2 at the bottom of the page with the stream 1 and 2 on the left. And so these are pictures of the existing conditions of the site. This is the stream coming into the site from across Hobson Pike. And then the pictures on the left are of wetland 1. The outlet box on the bottom left is where the stream is supposed to be entering. To be honest, there's not a ton of flow that's making it to there. A lot of the water dissipates before it enters that outlet box. And then eventually there's no flow that reaches that wetland 2, which is on the right side of the screen. You can see the outlet box for the former sedimentation basin, as well as pipes entering that wetland 2. And then the next pictures are conditions immediately downstream of wetland 2, showing very little flow that makes it into the outfall stream. It's really an intermittent stream or wet weather conveyance at this time. There's just not a lot of flow and high rainfall events that's making it there. You'll see a lot of debris. It's not great aquatic life or environmental benefits that are currently in the downstream. So that's part of our mitigation proposals, is really fixing the drainage on site and getting the drainage to where it's supposed to be going and fixing the overall watershed. And this is just a TRAM worksheet that was submitted and accepted by TDEC to show the low quality nature of these wetlands. Anything below a score of 44 would be deemed as low resource value, and these wetlands were scored as a 29. So now getting into the variance requests that Logan mentioned, we're filling the low quality wetlands 1 and 2 on site and encapsulating the remaining portion of that stream 3, which is in wetland 1, as well as disturbance within the zone 1 buffer along the southern property line for site access. So I'll show these disturbance areas for wetland 1 and 2. They're necessary due to utility improvements that are required for this site, improving the hydrology and additional conditions that were placed on the preliminary SP from NDOT and planning that we can kind of get into later. And then this is the stream buffer disturbance that we are requesting. It is 60 linear feet in total, 900 square feet in total for a 30-foot drive out to Old Hickory Boulevard. For where our access easement is in agreement with the adjacent property owner, there's just not enough room to get out to Old Hickory Boulevard with a 30-foot drive access. So that area in red on the right is kind of the area within the stream buffer that we're requesting the variance for. This is just another thing to note for the site. We do have an LID waiver for shallow bedrock as well as steep slopes on site. Some of our mitigation proposals are LID practices, but we're proposing those in areas where they make sense in fill areas and not necessarily where we're cutting into bedrock, because they may not be, they're just not going to function well when they're sitting on top of bedrock. So this is a summary of the mitigation we're providing. I'll just touch quickly on each of these mitigation strategies that we have. So this is an overall plan, and I'll go a little bit into detail in each mitigation practice. The first one is really connecting the hydrology on site. As mentioned before, that pipe is broken and no flows making it to the stream to the west. So we're proposing a new watertight RCP pipe to traverse the site and make sure that the flow from west of Hobson Pike truly makes it to its eventual outfall, and restoring kind of the aquatic features in the stream downstream, and overall environmental benefits downstream of the site. We're proposing in one of our stormwater areas a constructed wetland. This will be designed per Metro stormwater guidance. We've included a long-term maintenance plan on the plan, as well as we'll provide a more robust one with the grading permit acceptance. We have seed mix and plant mix that, Josh, if you want to.
Yeah, this constructed wetland for mitigation number 2, it's based on a successful project we've had just about a mile away from here in Laverne. That was, we used the Metro design guidelines for that pond. It's been a big success. We've got a lot of good plant material that's thriving. It basically consists of 4 bays connected with a flowage channel. We've got 2 different 4 bays in the pond, a flowage channel that meanders through the pond bottom. And we're focused on live stakings planted adjacent to that swale area, as well as on some of the embankments of the pond where other flows are entering into the pond. It's also included a very robust maintenance plan that the owner's going to undertake. It's annual inspections, both for sediment in the four bays and in the channels, as well as the kind of the health and the status of the plant material. We'll be doing replacements as needed. So, it's great having the owners here today to talk about, their commitment to the site and making sure that these measures are carried out through the maintenance plan.
It's 2 minutes.
Okay. I'll breeze through some of these other mitigations. So we are proposing to not only restore the water quality buffer along the southern stream, but also expand the water quality stream. If you see the dashed blue line there on the right, that's where the existing Zone 1 buffer is for the stream. And so we're proposing additional plantings to widen that water quality buffer, really add a lot of plantings above our TDU requirements within this area to establish a wider water quality buffer and improve, soil restoration and things of that nature in this area.
Yeah, the plantings include 115 canopy and understory trees, over 270 riparian species shrubs. There's quite a bit of existing plant material and trees in the channel. We're going to be removing all the invasives on the ground level and protecting all the trees. One of the strategies that we worked with Metro on was creating a visible buffer with a kind of a tree-lined edge to our limit of disturbance, trying to keep from having any maintenance practices encroach into the buffer area. So it's both a mix of planting as well as a robust maintenance plan that's going to include annual inspections. So we'll be continuing to remove invasive species using the IPM guidelines that have the least disruptive practices within that buffer area as we go through the maintenance plan on an annual basis.
Okay, then going quickly through these other ones, we're proposing additional plantings above our TDU requirements, roughly 25,000 square feet in this area. And then these are some of the LID practices that I mentioned earlier. In areas of fill, such as east of the buildings 3 and 4 here, we're proposing pervious pavers and water quality swales, as well as additional pervious pavers in the retail lots, which is an area of fill. This is not within phase 1, but we're committing to adding additional pavers here to improve water quality on the site.
Great. Thank you. It's time. All right. I'll close applicant's presentation and open it up for public comment. Is there anybody here to speak on this case? Please raise your hand. Okay. Seeing none. Logan, did we receive any other comments and mail?
No, we did not on this case.
All right. That'll close public hearing and open it up for the commissioners for conversation. Just to clarify, you all came here, I think, a year or two ago for a preliminary. Is that correct?
I did not come here for a preliminary hearing, I don't believe. We met with Metro staff a few weeks ago to discuss the mitigation proposal.
Yeah, not to my knowledge.
Okay.
I remember.
All right. Okay. And then just to go back to your mitigation, I know you were a bit rushed in that. Go back to the last two slides, or I think we kind of sped through 3 and mitigation number 4, starting at that point.
Sure. So this is an area that's planned north of the industrial development within the residential area that we're proposing additional large trees. This is not currently designed, but it was a practice that we talked with Metro Water about, including additional trees that are above our TDU requirement to increase the water quality.
Okay.
So for clarification, that would be part of like phase 2 or 3 of the development, but not necessarily part of this phase 1.
Correct.
Correct.
Yep.
Okay.
And then for mitigation 5 and 6.
Yep. These are pervious pavers that would be included with this part of the development. This is plan south, but really east of buildings 3 and 4 are pervious pavers. Like I mentioned, basically the center of the site is where a lot of the cut and bedrock on the site is. And so these areas are areas of fill where we think pervious pavers can be placed and maintained well. And so it's roughly 25,000 square feet of pervious pavers and additional water quality swales leading into that constructed wetland that was talked about earlier. So we're trying to find areas on the site where those practices can work, and we're lowering the water quality volume that's eventually going. And then the seventh one, which would also be in a different phase, but where, this area is an area of fill. It currently sits quite a ways below Murfreesboro Pike, and we'd be raising this area of the site, but is another area where we can institute some additional pervious pavers. All of this would be above any water quality requirements that we're already meeting through extended detention ponds across the site.
What was the total area of wetlands being eliminated or disturbed? versus-
0.44 acres. So the wetland in the northeast corner is a 0.25 acre wetland currently, and then the sedimentation basin, wetland 2 on the plan east side of the site is 0.19 acres.
And the area of your constructed wetland?
Is 0.50 acres at the bottom, 1.12 acres in total.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
What's the length of stream you're encapsulating?
It's 296 feet on our property. The length of the pipe currently underground is roughly 1,430 linear feet across the site. But on our site, it's 296 feet. And we are in conversation with TDEC. We have made an individual ARAP proposal already. And there's conversation with TDEC to get that shortened, because once it enters the wetland, it really dissipates and doesn't become a stream anymore. So that's being confirmed with the TDEC permit writer as we speak, and there may be an update to that HD to the tune of roughly, it would go from 296 linear feet to roughly 120 linear feet.
Can you clarify of the mitigation strategies, which ones are directly applicable to this current request? Because you've shown some for, future phases, which I don't think we should be considering under this variance request. So like mitigation 1 and 2, are those the only 2 that are applicable to the current variance request?
No, so this
Or is it-
3 would be included in this variance request. This is,
Okay.
so if we go to the overall plan, maybe it's a little helpful. So on the plan left side of your screen is the stream that's on the southern property border. That whole buffer restoration and expansion would be included with this phase of the development. And if we go back to this slide, so if you can see the dashed blue line on each of these kind of 3 snippets, we're expanding the water quality buffer by roughly 25,000 square feet along 1,300 linear feet of that stream. And so I think in largest, the water quality buffer would be roughly 60 feet in total, and then expanded to 40 or 50 feet in other areas as well. But so this would be included in this phase. This technically would happen with the retail portion of the site. I think, where the wetland 1 is within the residential area. And so just, committing as we come through with these future phases, we would implement those mitigation strategies. And then these would also be included within phase 1. So it'd be really 4 and 7 are the ones that wouldn't be within phase 1.
But will you need a variance for the future phases as well? Will you have to come back for a variance for those?
So I don't think so, because the overall grading permit and what we're approving is mass grading for the whole site. And then when the final SP and grading permit comes for like the residential area, that fill of the wetland and the encapsulation of the stream will have already happened.
So the only future mitigation you have identified for future phase is the tree planting between that one?
Yep. And then the pervious pavers that would be within the retail area. All other mitigations would be implemented day 1. I do like all 3 of these phases are going to run hopefully pretty concurrently with each other. There's not going to be time difference between the residential and the retail and industrial. They'll have their own separate grading permits, but the grading permit for the phase one includes the mass grading of the overall site as well as the industrial area.
Yeah, the only question I have is if it's future, if you're including it for mitigation for the work that's happening now for the variances that you need, but that work won't be completed until those future phases are done. I'm not sure, maybe this is a Metro Water question, how you sign off that the variance and the mitigation is complete until those future phases are complete. How would that work, I guess?
I think you'll make it a condition of approval that these will have to be done, and we will ensure that during the review process, that one permit may not get closed out until the other one. Check with the timing. Does the timing allow you to keep one open until the other one is submitted and approved?
Yes, it should. Until it's submitted and approved, yes. As far as, closing out all three at the same time, that timing may not make a whole lot of sense. But like if the condition is going to be we can't close out and get final build out on the grading permit of the industrial until the retail and residential is approved, I think that timing would make sense.
So we will keep it open until the other one's approved.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a good question. So they, they'll operate on a TCO for who knows how long then, I guess, until everything else is finished.
I would love to think that Metro Water is a life safety feature, but it's not considered life safety. It's building fire trades is what will allow somebody to get a temporary.
Yeah.
So, through the normal process, it will be handled. So they could go through a temporary. As long as codes is willing to extend temporaries, we will be on there as well.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
From a stream buffer mitigation perspective, I appreciate the robustness of the approach and really looking at that corridor as a way to enhance it. The one comment I think I would ask or make related to it is just looking at the plan and the schedule that you have there, if there's an opportunity to increase the diversity of specifically the tree canopy within there, and just seeing how there's that edge that you spoke about along the development portion in kind of coordination with Metro Water staff. And then it looks to be kind of the same material as it goes into the stream. I think there's an opportunity to just look at the diversity within there and even add some more to the schedule, especially in the trees, to just enhance that. Just knowing that the place that we are, especially not to get too detailed, but looking at the pin oak and knowing there's certain things that are affecting those right now with blight, just diversity just helps, I think, long term, and just looking at the resiliency of those spaces. And it looks like a great opportunity to enhance that that corridor and that buffer. And so if you could look at that and just work with staff on increasing that, I think that'd be great.
Will do.
Can we talk about the wetlands a bit? So they're considered low quality wetlands and correct, and you're planning to fill them.
Mm-hmm.
So where are you proposing that the water that normally, they were created because water needs somewhere to go? So what's your drainage plan? Is it just the pond in that lower corner of the site?
So
is everything going there?
We would be taking any water that's coming into wetland 1 from across Hobson Pike. We would be taking it to the stream downstream, direct outfall into the stream that goes east to Hurricane Creek. So directly downstream of wetland 2 is where we would take the flow. That's where it was originally going in 2004, 2007 when the amphitheater was in development, and it's lost flow over the last 20 years. And so that's where we would be taking that water through a pipe that would be. So the pipe on the left is the pipe that we're proposing. It would follow the property line along the adjacent parcel and then traverse through the site and eventually outfall past wetland 2 into the stream.
So what's your collection mechanism for that going into the pipe if you're filling the wetland?
So this would be a storm bypass, essentially. We're not going to take the water and treat it on our site. We have extended detention ponds, 4 of them, and then the constructed wetland that we would be treating the water on our site.
Okay.
But for the water that's coming directly from Hobson Pike, we would be piping it and bypassing to the stream.
Okay.
Where are you with TDEC on the wetlands? You have concurrence on non-jurisdiction?
Yep, we have concurrence on non-jurisdiction, non-connected wetlands with TDEC. Like I mentioned, we currently have an individual ARAP in process for the remaining encapsulation of the stream, but they are not jurisdictional wetlands and not interconnected.
Okay. Mr. Michu, please.
If you're curious, it's standard process for us not to approve the grading plans until all state and federal permits are obtained.
Yeah.
So that is something that we would do on our end. We would make sure that it happens.
Perfect. Thank you. Any other staff comments that we need to consider with this motion, Logan?
No, not to my knowledge.
Okay. Mr. Michu?
This is the mitigation you see is the second submittal of mitigation that they provided. The first set, we asked them to come back with something a little bit more robust. They came and met with us at staff level, and we worked through some items. And this is not the first package that you're seeing; it's the second submittal. So we did work with them on the mitigation items.
Great. Okay. And you all are happy with what's being presented now?
So Metro Water never says, oh, yeah, absolutely, let's get rid of wetlands. So our stance is never to get rid of the jurisdictional features, but we did work with them in this manner because we know that these were like old detention ponds and just pipes that didn't drain well. So we took that in consideration. And the idea that we had was we will work with them to get the most robust mitigation plan we can, and then bring it to the commission.
Great. Any concern or comments on the constructed wetland and issues in the past with those and their performance here?
When they work, they work. So, a lot of this is going to be on the design.
Yeah.
And this is something that the technical reviewer will ensure that they're doing the utmost on the design side and the review side. And then we will monitor the construction of it as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And we're ensuring that the Metro Water guidelines talk about, make sure you have enough water going to these constructed wetlands in order to keep them wetlands.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've ensured that the drainage area going to this is, I want to say it's just over 25 acres. So we're making sure that we're abiding by all necessary design guidelines to make sure that this wetland is honestly a much higher quality wetland than the 2 wetlands we're filling.
Yeah, I think to that too, just from a landscape perspective of just really dialing in, I think the detail of that, where live stakes are so they work long term and they're not, too high up the bank, and they're really getting access to where that water is and where that moisture is. And just, I think the detail of that will be really important to make sure it's successful and it's able to be managed, but it also works as intended. So I think as you're looking at the diversity of the stream, just kind of applying similar aspects and just looking at the detail of how that works would be really helpful.
Absolutely.
Great. 2 things. One, can you kind of summarize and revisit, the area of the constructed wetland versus the area of the ones that would be filled, just
Sure.
so we have that
Yep. So
top of mind?
wetland 1 on the northeast corner is 0.25 acres. Wetland 2 is 0.19 acres. So that's a total of 0.44 acres. The constructed wetland bottom of pond is 0.50 acres. And then the total area of the wetland is 1.12 acres in total.
Okay. And then my second question on the inspection of the mitigation, the long-term maintenance and the inspections, are you doing signage or not to prevent mowing?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. And then the maintenance, you mentioned it would be inspected annually. Is that the owner inspecting, or would Metro be coming out and inspecting? What is the plan for that? And who would be doing those inspections to ensure that things are operating properly?
So I can at least talk from the owner perspective. We'll have in any markets that we're in, we have partners and vendors in those regions that will have the mitigation plan and the monitoring maintenance requirements that are put together by Kimley Horn and then approved by Metro. And then they'll have those, we have local on-site property managers, and then they'll have vendors that'll be the group that are actually out on site. In reality, it'll probably occur more frequently than what's in the manual because they're going to be out there on a weekly basis, bi-weekly basis with their normal maintenance and mowing operations. But it'll occur in that schedule. Internally, we have we have a very rigorous turnover procedure from when we go from construction and then the building's actually stabilized and built, so that property management knows exactly what needs to happen for stormwater, landscaping, other maintenance items around their property. From a regulatory standpoint, I'll defer to Metro though.
I don't know if Robert, you want to talk, or I could, I'll give it a go, and then Robert will correct me if I'm wrong. We actually do inspect our features after construction. So during the permitting process, we will ensure that it is being built to standards. After the as-built are approved and all the UNOs are issued, there is a process to where Metro Water does go back, periodically to ensure that these features are still in place. And if they are not, or if they're in need of maintenance, we don't necessarily issue a notice of violation. It's more of a notice of noncompliance that just says, hey, there's something going wrong. Here's the pictures of it approved. Here's the approved plans. It's in need of maintenance or something needs to be done. And we will send that notice, usually through Robert's group, to the owner. Is that a good summary, or you want to add anything else, or?
Yeah, the only thing I would add is there's also a requirement for the annual report to be submitted. So, showing that what maintenance has been done that year.
Working towards a motion, possibly?
I make the motion. This study has been stagnant far too long. It's time to move. Motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second? Second discussion? We've got the comments that you were going to include in the decision letter that Mr. Oliver had noted.
Yeah, this would be conditions of the decision.
This would remind me, if you don't mind.
Work with staff to look at the diversity of the plantings, especially the tree canopy along the stream corridor that they have identified, and then just the detail of that wetland mitigation strategy of working with staff.
Okay, any discussion?
No, I think, the mitigation seems adequate. We usually ask for more than what you're impacting, and I think that's happened on this site, and they've been proactive with plans for future development, which we can't necessarily consider, but it was well organized, and, being able to provide the actual numbers of what's being disturbed versus not is helpful.
The one thing to note, if the wetland relocation, that they're swapping it out, they're man-made, swapping it. If the buffer encroachment were the only thing on here, TDEC allows buffer averaging. And that's something I would like the updated management manual to consider, just because if that were the only request, that's a piece I don't like in our manual.
You want to put that in the minutes?
If we can address that in the next revision, or consider it, that'd be great.
Send it to Rebecca.
Put it in the comment box?
Yeah. They're far exceeds the requirements along the length.
You have room for a new amphitheater?
Would love to institute one. I'll let.
Sin would be very upset.
Yeah, right. We don't want to do that. All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Thank you. Great presentation. Looking forward to this being developed. Thank you, Councilperson Stiles.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah, of
Appreciate
course.
it. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'll just jump in. I don't know if you want to take up the meeting minutes now or at the end.
Oh, thank you. Yes, let's go ahead and.
Does 3 votes carry?
Short answer is yes, 3 votes can carry. Stormwater Management Commission has voting regulations under the Metro Code. That's under 1564090. 4 members of the Stormwater Management Commission shall constitute a quorum. We have a quorum for this meeting. An abstention would not affect quorum. A majority vote of the members present shall be required for actions by the commission. So given there are 5 members present, 3 would constitute a majority.
New information?
Motion to approve.
All right, motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? None. Okay, motion carries. Thank you. All right, next case. Does anybody need to break? Break? Nope. Okay. All right. Next case on the agenda is 3702B Estes. If the applicant could come to the front here, and while you're doing that, I'll let Logan start introducing the case.
Case number 2 on the agenda, case 2026-00010, 3702B Estes Road at 3702B Estes Road. APN is 116-120-10500. Inspector is Development Services Infill. Council District 34, Sandy Ewing. Applicant's request, Zone 1 floodway buffer disturbance in order to remove an existing structure, perform grading activities, landscape, and install 42 square feet of permeable pavers. Zone 2 floodway buffer disturbance to include 1,899 square feet of impervious surfaces, rooftop and permeable pavers. Continued mowing and maintenance of a 20-foot wide portion of the Zone 1 floodway buffer. Modified buffer signage location. Appellant is Bo Richardson, represented by Dell and Associates. Comments, stormwater staff. The new residence will be located outside of the Zone 1 buffer. Over half of the Zone 1 buffer will be planted with primarily native species, and the floodway will not be mowed. Codes, no comment provided. Planning, no comment provided. Greenways request a conservation greenway easement to be memorialized in a conservation greenway easement agreement to include the floodway and the 30-foot wide area of the Zone 1 floodway buffer that is not approved for continued mowing and maintenance. The conservation greenway easement agreement to be recorded prior to use and occupancy of a new residential building.
All right, with that, I think this applicant is pretty familiar with how this works. Would you like me to go through the process? Okay, great. Thought you would. All right. For that, I'll let you introduce yourselves, and I'll start the clock after that.
There we go. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. Michael Garrigan, Dale & Associates, 516 Heather Place. To my right is Josh Lee with Thompson Burton, as well as the property owner, Mr. Bo Richardson. Mr. Richardson purchased this property. It was his first home he had bought in 40 years. He asked the seller if it flooded during 2010. She said no. To his knowledge, that meant it was not in a flood zone. Not uncommon. His plan is to build a house for his son. So this is not an investment type of project. There have been prior cases proposed on this lot. The most recent was a 2-family dwelling. Like us, it went to the BZA to get a setback variance to scoot the house as far close to the street as possible. But it was a 2-family, tall, 3-story structure. I believe it had garages proposed coming right off the road, so they were under the base flood elevation, and it had quite a bit of opposition from the neighborhood. What Mr. Richardson specifically has done, I don't want to take any credit for it, a fantastic job of is communicating with the neighbors. I believe Logan received a letter of support from the homeowners association across the street. We've been in touch. I believe they had an attorney we've been talking to several times, and I think the general consensus is they're now much more comfortable than with the prior proposal. What is on site today is a house that sits almost 100% in the Zone 1 and 4 inches below the base flood elevation. Technically speaking, the house could be renovated. It is habitable. It's not condemned or anything along that line. But what we want to do is obviously demo a house that's in the Zone 1, build a house that's primarily in the Zone 2, which off the cuff seems like an improvement. What we've also done, tried really hard to do is just go above and beyond. Every step of the way, Bo has sent half a dozen letters out probably throughout the process, communicated with Councilmember Ewing, really done a lot of legwork. And from a design standpoint, what we wanted to do is overkill times 4 on essentially on the mitigation. To speak to that, the modified French drains that are proposed for the house are twice as big as they would be required. The pavers are 4 times as big as they would be required, and the rain garden is 4 times as big as it would be required. So 3 GICPs for a single family house. We're also proposing to cut and fill without counting anything below the 2, which I believe the prior request had to count some below the 2 to balance their earthwork. So no uncompensated fill is in this proposal. There's actually more cut than fill, whether you count the 2-year or not. And then lastly, reestablish that 30-foot of the Zone 1 where the current house sit, where much of the current house sits, with the native trees and shrubs and grasses that are on the mitigation plan. I think it's 10 trees, a couple dozen shrubs, and a lot of peat pods of switchgrass, leaving a 20-foot strip behind the house for him to mow and maintain. And we have discussed this with Greenways and are in agreement with the conservation easement from that 30-foot back. Not really much can be done. So at the end of the day, a lot of impervious surface in the Zone 1 is being taken out. The only thing that's being requested is 40 feet of pavers, pervious pavers. We're treating the design of the new house as if the old house was not there from a stormwater management standpoint, meaning we're not balancing the net IA. We're treating it as if it were a greenfield lot. And hoping to start to reestablish this buffer. These are extremely difficult sites because your common homeowner just simply thinks, well, it's there. What am I supposed to do? Kind of thing. Over the years, I really tried to find something that could be kind of cookie cutter, kind of a standard. And I'm hoping that this go to the BZA, get the variance to scoot the house up, reestablish the buffer, overkill the mitigation can hopefully be something that helps these challenging lots. And I'll also mention that Bo, correct me if I'm wrong, but he did discuss possibly Metro purchasing this and was told no. Is that correct?
Never really.
Oh, you never did that. Okay. I thought
I do.
But that's kind of the only other option for these challenging lots that have been previously disturbed, previously developed, mowed and maintained as if there were no floodway there for 5 decades. I'll leave it at that. If anyone has anything they want to add.
I'll just mention again, to reiterate the community outreach and lack of opposition. We were at the BZA to get that setback variance and was successful. In fact, we were on the consent agenda. Nobody even came to oppose that or any discussion at all. So in conclusion, we just asked for the commission's variance here, saying that this is going to increase the flood safety, not only of this lot, but also of the surrounding community. So with that, we'll stop and be ready for questions.
I would want to add one more thing to consider. This is not only taking a house that's in the Zone 1 and putting it in the Zone 2, but it's taking a house that's 4 inches below the base flood and putting it 4 feet above, which is a positive for Metro's flood insurance program.
Great. All right. So, in impersonation? Great.
Yes, sir.
All right, close applicant's presentation, open it up for public comment. Is there anybody here to speak in favor or against? Please raise your hand or has questions. Comments? Sure. If you would come to the podium here and make sure that the button is pressed to turn on the mic and introduce yourself and address, and I'll give you 2 minutes.
Okay, is it on or where's the button?
When Councilmember Stiles is speaking, I went to go turn on the button and I couldn't find one either.
Oh,
Is it okay if she sits here?
Absolutely.
Sit here.
Ms. Stiles speaks with volume, so I'm sure it's recorded.
My name is Barbara Shields, and I live in a property across the creek from this property. So I have not been in communication with the homeowner and haven't heard these things. My only question is this: is there anything that you've heard that would increase the possible during high water that would be pushed onto the increase the volume in Sugar Tree Creek or push it onto the lots across the creek?
So
We can go ahead, Steve. Speak to that.
Yeah.
But my quick reaction is no, it'll make it better because they're removing the footprint that's occupying volume. But I would.
I mean, it sounds like they've made an effort to do that. As he said, they're very challenging lots there.
Right.
That's my only.
So Logan over there, raise your hand. And I are actually Metro Water staff members.
Okay.
We would actually review the plans to ensure that it doesn't have a negative impact on anybody else. So in this particular plan, they have like impervious areas, but they have like rain gardens and things of that nature to help mitigate it. And then we also have a cut and fill balance. So if they plan on placing any fill in the floodplain, we will make them take one bucket out for every bucket they put in. So we will ensure that there's a balance, and we'll do our best to ensure that there's not a negative impact on any of the neighbors.
Well, very good. That's my only concern.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Shields, for coming here today. Anybody else? Okay. Logan, any other letters or notes?
I did not get the letter that Michael referenced from the HOA, but I do know we had a lot of opposition at the previous times that the other owner was here. Seems like maybe we heard that 2 or 3 times in the past. And then I just had some correspondence with a neighbor, but no sense that he was in opposition or in favor of the variance.
Okay.
So this is a different ownership of the same property we've heard before.
That's correct, yeah. And a very different proposal, like Michael said.
Okay.
That was the developer who bought the lot.
I think previously we had a lot of concerns with 2 homes going on there and the approach that was being taken. But in general, we had no problem with, allowing encroachments in order to improve and get that existing house out. So this seems like it meets all the goals that we were previously worried about.
Yeah, and I had some pretty detailed discussions with both that owner and the owner who sold it to him as well about just the history of, damages here and if there was any damage throughout the flood events and what they could do and what they couldn't do on the lot, so.
And BZA has approved the plan submitted, okay?
I mean, there were 20 neighbors here last time.
And I wanted to say, I apologize, I misspoke, Logan. You were not copied on that, but I do have the email if anybody was interested.
Yeah, we'll get it and we can put it in the record.
Okay. Make a motion to approve.
All right, we have a motion or a second.
Hold on, are we not discussing?
Oh, I'm sorry. Close public hearing.
Oh, we did.
Thank you. So,
I'm not the only one that wants to discuss this. So I do appreciate you all are moving the, impervious area of the home further out of, floodway harm from zone 1 to zone 2. Looks like some adequate mitigation taking place with the rain garden and the impervious pavers being put in. I appreciate that. The 4-to-1 ratio of what your mitigation is compared to what's necessary. I appreciate that. And also, I want to say, yes, I do think it is, my concern was thinking about the flood risk on the site and making sure the owner is aware of that. But using the 4 foot above base flood elevation for the finished floor elevation makes sense. That's proactive, I think, given the flooding that we've been having in Nashville. Definitely want to make sure you have flood insurance on the property. You will be required to do that. But I did want us to just kind of stop. So you have, based on the plans, 1,600 square feet in zone 1 and 400 square feet in zone 2 with the current situation. And then you're moving everything out of the zone 1, right?
Everything but
That's
40, that
42.
little triangle.
Yeah, 42 square feet will still be in zone 1.
And those would be the pavers.
Yeah, and then almost 1,900 square feet in zone 2. But a significant, about a third of the property would be out of both zone 1 and zone 2. Right? I'm just ballpark based on visual. Looks like about a third of the footprint.
Oh, I see. That'd be about accurate, yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. So I do see this as an improvement to the site, and it's a difficult situation that if Metro wasn't going to demo the house and put into green space, it seems like you all are trying to work with what you've got. And the hardship is there, my assessment. So,
Perfect.
okay.
All right. Very good. Thank you, Commissioner.
Yeah, go ahead. The one comment I had was just, can the stream buffer sign be moved to the edge of the landscape buffer rather than at the back of it?
I think that'll be captured in the permit approval.
Okay.
I noticed that too. But they're not asking for a variance from it, so it'll be fixed.
Yeah, and
prior to plan
located for the
approval.
permit. Okay, great. Just think it needs to go here.
Well, I think there was discussion about that, and maybe they moved that because they were going to maintain the trees and shrubs for the mitigation plantings.
There's 20-foot, they basically modified the buffer to have a 30 and a 20-foot allowable mow zone. And then
that would be no disturbance.
Then they have native landscaping that's proposed in the 30. And so they were putting the signs on the floodway line instead of on the outside of all the tree plantings.
I think that was at the, Rebecca may have had a discussion with the landscape architect.
I think that, I remember that we originally showed them at the 30, and then it was requested that we move them to the floodway.
Just because you're going to be maintaining the plants in there. I mean, you're not going to mow it.
No. I mean, it could be at the 30 if that, I mean, that's where the greenway easement's going to be, so
I mean,
it might make sense to be there.
If that's something that's been discussed specifically with staff, then I will defer to staff instead of us not being involved in those conversations.
I was going to say the same thing. If it's something important to the commission members, we would happily defer to the commission members. I would like to add one note of clarification. It was mentioned about flood insurance. Flood insurance is usually required by the lenders. If there is not a loan on the property when they construct it, flood insurance may not necessarily be required, although we recommend whoever has it has flood insurance, but it's not necessarily mandated that they have flood insurance if there's not a loan on there.
Yeah. I mean, the signage question, I think signage just helps because you never know who's going to be back there mowing and doing whatever the activities are. And so I think it's just a good reminder for folks. And but if there was some specific reason that staff talked through putting it there, then I'll defer to them. I just know it's a helpful tool when different folks are maintaining areas within these buffers.
Any discussion or concerns about greenways comments?
Yeah, that's what I was going to bring up. I didn't know. It's specifically for the 30. If they do have to build a greenway there, how's that going to work with the mitigation? So I wondered if maybe you should just dedicate the floodway as the easement instead of the floodway plus 30, but
We're happy to work with greenways to.
I don't know how
fine-tune
Greenway
that.
feels about that.
And that's really close to the house too. Oh, so
Yeah, I'm David Diaz, Borrego with Metro Greenways. So Greenways, my understanding is that the Greenway here would be at grade. I will say that generally we like the flexibility, whatever flexibility we can for a future location. This is a long-range Greenway location, and we tend to like to be out of the floodway if we can be. We do have greenways in floodways, and sometimes those do pose long-term maintenance issues and regular maintenance issues depending on rain events. So our preference is to have, again, that flexibility of being allowed to put the trail in the remaining 30 foot of the buffer, zone 2 buffer, if that's possible. Thank you.
Greenways to be determined, but may affect some of the mitigation. But since there's no like active plan for the Greenway related to this site right now, right?
It's a long-range.
So long range plans. So if Greenways builds something in that area, if you all put in a Greenway in that area, then that'd be worked out if they need to come before us or not. I don't think they usually have to, but
They would just, I think, need to somehow
yeah.
review the mitigation if there's a way to.
But with a 4-to-1 ratio on the mitigation, I think there's some wiggle room there if Greenway does put something in potentially without significant impact.
Okay.
We're done.
Ready for a motion?
Does the prior motion stand?
I do believe we have a motion and a second to approve. I don't know if that wants to be, amend that or still proceed forward with that motion.
Just need a second.
Okay, second.
I believe it did or did have a second.
Any other discussion? All right, all in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Thank you.
So are we just doing work with staff on signage location? Whether or not it.
Anybody need a break? I got mine. Okay. All right. Next case on the agenda is In-N-Out Burger. The applicant could come to the desk here, and while that's being done, I'll let Logan introduce the case. Is the applicant here?
He is. He's going to probably sit over there because he's got a PowerPoint that we can get onto. They may split up here.
Okay.
Case number 3 on the agenda, case 2026-00009, In-N-Out Burger, 8th and Berry, 2711 8th Avenue South. APN is 118-060-17400. Inspector is NPDES. Council District 17, Terryville. Applicant's requesting 9,290 cubic yards of uncompensated fill in the floodplain. Proposal not to provide mitigation. Appellant is In-N-Out Burger, represented by Kimley Horn. Comments, stormwater staff, no comment provided. Codes, no comment provided. Planning, no comment provided. Greenways is not requesting a greenway or greenway easement.
All right, with that, is the applicant familiar with the process? Great, and I'll let you introduce everyone here and start the clock.
Great, thank you very much. My name is Matt Schlicker. I'm with Kimley Horn and Associates.
I'm Abby McCarthy, a civil engineer with Kimley Horn as well.
Mary Johnson, also a civil engineer with Kimley Horn.
Great, thank you.
So appreciate the opportunity to discuss this variance request with you. I'm going to start off by talking about the existing and proposed conditions, some of the analysis that we did surrounding the proposal, and then the conclusions and the results. This site is located near Berry Hill. It's in sort of the South Melrose neighborhood of Nashville. It's bounded on the east there by Franklin Road and on the west by Gale Lane. And the existing, on the left is a survey with aerial in the background. There is an existing furniture store located at this property. And then on the right shows the proposed site plan. The shaded box represents the restaurant, and then there's some associated parking, and your store is 483.3. And the 100-year base flood elevation here is above 480, pulled out of the floodplain. And the grading in the parking areas and drive areas are graded to connect to that restaurant. So that brings us to our variance request. As mentioned, we're requesting to place approximately 9,290 cubic yards of fill within the FEMA floodplain without compensatory cut. And the two primary reasons for that is the compensatory cut is not feasible on this property with it being completely covered in the floodplain. And really more importantly, the hydraulic modeling that we've done demonstrates no increase in the water surface elevation and no impact to community flood risk. And I'll get into detail on that over the next few slides. This sort of outlines our hydraulic modeling approach, which is standard procedure and probably several members of the commission are familiar. But we obtained the effective FEMA model for this area. It was completed in 2020, and it was done by the Nashville District of the Army Corps of Engineers. So we obtained that model. You can see the green lines in the exhibit here represent the cross sections that were included in that model. And so we added the 3 cross sections in red to get more definition on the project site. We updated the existing model to reflect the survey information that we had collected and ran the model with that. So that gave us our existing conditions baseline for the base flood elevation. And then we revised that model to include the proposed grading in that area and reran the model with those conditions. And this shows the results, which indicates no increase in the water surface elevation, no impact. You can see on the furthest right column, there is all zeros there, which reflect no rise. And that was an expected result for reasons that I'll get into in just a moment here, both for our part, and then there's been some coordination with Barry Moran with the Nashville District Army Corps of Engineer. That was a result that he expected as well. And so to explain that, I want to give some hydraulic context for what's happening at this location. This is a historical image of Browns Creek, and you can see the dotted blue line represents the original flow path and center line of Browns Creek. Of course, right in this area, I-65 and I-440 were built, and when that happened, Browns Creek was encapsulated, fully encapsulated in a box culvert. And you can see sort of south of I-440 there, there's a big red area, which is the effective floodway. And that narrows down to a thin strip that represents where the culvert starts. And it's fully encapsulated all the way through this South Melrose area in the vicinity of the project until it opens back up again on the east side of I-65. There's an aerial image of that same area. So the subject property is in the center, and you can see the embankments for I-440 and I-65. So the Browns Creek would be running from the right side of this page. It would hit the interstate, and that's where when it becomes encapsulated and runs through this area until it gets to the east side of I-65. This is just an image showing the entrance to that culvert where it becomes encapsulated. And this is another aerial image of the subject property. And you can see notably right in the center of this image, there's that concrete strip, and that represents the location and the alignment of that underground box culvert here. So clearly this is not an open stream situation here. This is fully encapsulated. And the primary reason why there's no rise created by the fill is that this area is what's considered an ineffective flow area. And that essentially just means that the water in the floodplain, so in the blue area that's shown with inundation boundary, there's no active movement downstream. You can see that makes sense because it's bounded by I-440 on the south and I-65 on the east. And so that blue area in question is not connected with any downstream conveyance. And so there's of course flow in the culvert, but above ground, there's no movement downstream. And so I'll go to this next page here. The cross-section on the left represents a typical riverine cross-section. The shading represents velocity. And so and this section actually happens to be just upstream of the culvert in Browns Creek. You can see in the center, the dark areas represent the floodway, and then there's the green shading, and you can't really see the legend, but the green represents flow and velocity in those areas all the way through the flood plain. This cross-section on the right is in the subject area. This is where the culvert is completely encapsulated, so there's flow in the culvert, but the area to the east in the floodplain area is shown in that hatched yellow area, which means there's no downstream velocity there. That area does not contribute to the conveyance capacity, and therefore the water surface elevation of the stream, either at this location or upstream or downstream. And so what that means is fill in this area does not impact water surface elevations, and the converse is true. Also, even if there was a deep cut here, it would not have any impact in the water surface elevations, again, because that water is not moving downstream.
I failed to give you your 2-minute warning, so I'll give you another 2 minutes.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I'm about wrapped up, I think. So this summarizes what I have just been saying. The surcharging, floodwater, and I should mention the reason that area floods, there was evidence of manholes popping out during the 2010 flood. And so the floodwater surcharges out through those access points. And that's one of the causes of the flooding there. Of course, there's precedent for filling in the floodplain, uncompensated fill in the floodplain, where their studies show that there's no adverse impact. A big example of that is in East Bank, where Metro has passed a legislation allowing for uncompensated fill in the East Bank following a core study demonstrating no adverse impact. And that concludes the presentation. So we respectfully request the approval of the variance to allow the uncompensated fill within the floodplain. This will allow us to take a building that's currently subject to repeated flooding and replace it with a building that is above the base flood elevation with no adverse impact to water surface elevations, either at the site or in the community in general. Happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you. I'll close the applicant's presentation. Is there anybody to speak on this case? Please raise your hand. Okay, if you wouldn't mind coming to the podium here and introducing yourself, address, and I'll give you 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Kevin Gangware, Civil Site Design Group, CSDG.
I'm sorry, is this mic working?
Am I not speaking loud?
You have to project like Miss Stiles.
There's no button over there.
Yeah.
Kevin Gangware, Civil Site Design Group, 2305 Klein Avenue, just around the corner from this. I just wanted to speak as a professional civil engineer in favor of this. I think in this particular case, all of the flow is in the box culvert. This area is just being flooded because, frankly, the box culvert is just not big enough. And so it's surcharging out. And so all of these properties are subject to flooding simply because the culvert itself is not large enough. And filling in this area has zero effect on the flood elevation in this entire area. So not only is this good for In-N-Out Burger, but it's good for the other properties that are in this area that are in this same floodplain. They can be raised out in the future as well. So, and also I'm just a significant fan of In-N-Out Burgers.
You just wanted a free burger, didn't you? I'm kidding. Thank you. That's, thank you, Ms. Greenware. All right.
David Abbey, Development Management Group, 4209 Gallatin Pike. Reiterating same things Kevin said, but also here basically as an owner's representative as well for In-N-Out. So here to answer any questions that we've been helped with.
Great. Thank you, David. Anybody else? Okay, with that, Logan, do we receive any other notices?
No, there was a comment in your package from a neighbor. He was just mostly concerned about access, and not necessarily related to the variance itself, and he acknowledged that, but just putting that out there.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And I also did want to say I misspoke on the Greenways comment. The comment should read, Greenways is working with the owner's design team to explore the possibility of a greenway easement. The easement is not a requirement. So there are discussions that are ongoing about a greenway easement, and our discussions have been if that somehow affects the variance itself, then the applicant would come back and revisit that. But I don't expect it would affect the variance itself.
Okay, great. All right, well, then I'll close the public hearing and open it up for discussion. Just to clarify that from the staff comment standpoint, that there are no staff comments on this. I'm sure you all worked extensively with the applicant.
Yeah, no stormwater staff comments, just greenway comment.
Okay, all right.
No, but another point of clarification is that staff has not had a consultant or done any in-house review of the no-res analysis, so that would be a part of the grading permit. And we'd make sure they had a no-res before the grading permit was approved.
Yeah. Mr. Michu.
Yeah, absolutely. We would have that as a condition, but we have had, as the applicant stated, we have had discussions with the Corps of Engineers on this and kind of have their concurrence that this is a lot of it is it's an ineffective area. So we're pretty confident, and we would absolutely make sure prior to any of our approvals.
Okay. And the building is being raised how many feet above base flood? Yeah.
At least 1 foot above base flood. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, I wish Tom or Roger were here because we have a 4-foot freeboard requirement.
That's only for residential.
But yeah. It's only residential?
Commercial is 1 foot.
Commercial is 1 foot.
Commercial's 1 foot.
Yeah.
Residential is
That's
4 foot
right.
above, and then non-residential, whether it's commercial or industrial, whatever, is 1 foot above.
And I know, trying to raise this more would lead to more complications with, access.
I can speak to that. The access points would stay the same. We would not close off that access between Gale and Franklin Pike.
What happened when Gale Loss was built 13 years ago? Was it uncompensated fill? Was it floodplain then?
I don't think it's changed much. I mean, you're asking me something about 13 years ago, and I'm not really sure what I had for breakfast yesterday. But I think the safe answer is we reviewed it, and we ensured that it met all the requirements. Is this the triangular building or is this the townhomes that are further up the hill?
Southwest. I mean, it's the property was subdivided to this lot and to split off the little triangular townhomes. So I would just assume that they had to do something.
I'm pretty sure I reviewed that one, and I wish I could tell you what the answer was, but the answer is they met every one of our regulations, or else we wouldn't have approved it.
Yeah.
No, the other building that's a shopping center up there, I think that was like a redevelopment of that building. There was a lot of discussion because I think that came in before that 2020 model was done by the Corps. So there was a BFE that was given by the Corps, but it may have changed since the time that model was done. It may have increased.
I mean, these are definitely unique when you got a surcharging pipe. It's the same thing at Capitol View. I mean, they filled 20,000 yards there to build it. I mean, are you not putting like an extra tree, like zero mitigation?
Well, there's plenty of landscaping. I mean, the landscaping meets the requirements, and I don't think there'd be opposition to doing some additional plantings, except for, I guess, in my opinion, this is not a water quality. We wouldn't be mitigating for a water quality impact. This is really strictly related to flood risk, and I don't think. I think we're demonstrating that there's no impact to flood risk. So.
Jay, also to answer your question, in and out typically standard-wise, they do above landscape requirements for any jurisdiction anyway, as a part of what they want to do just as corporate. So there will be additional landscaping above what typical metro requirements are.
Yeah, I mean, does that have to be part of the variant?
So every
I don't want
project,
somebody else going, well, they didn't do anything.
That's right. So every project is required to do mitigation unless they go to the commission and ask a variance to do no mitigation. And that is one of the requests, I believe, is to provide no mitigation. Now, you as a commission members, you could feel free to say, we do want you to do above and beyond the requirements. Hey, staff, make sure they do it for like TDUs. Or if there's a requirement for water quality and you want them to add additional pavers. The trick is that they're asking for uncompensated fill, and the only way to mitigate something for uncompensated fill is to compensate the fill. So you would be actually saying do a water quality mitigation for a uncompensated fill, which I think their thought is it's not really apples to apples, but if the commission so chooses, feel free to make it a condition of approval.
I would also like to add that we are adding more pervious area to this site. As you can see, it's mostly entirely asphalt and concrete. So we will be adding more landscape islands. And in and out, they take pride in how their sites look. There will be plenty of trees, plantings, landscaping as well.
Is this a waiver site?
We would be applying for an LID waiver here.
Can you speak to the square footage of the building in comparison with the existing building footprint?
Yeah, if you don't mind going back to the comparison.
Yeah.
And is there any plans to do any like pervious pavers or something like that for some of the parking stalls to help mitigate the drainage? I mean, you're putting in uncompensated, your request is to put in uncompensated fill without additional mitigation, but you're also
The site
talking
will
about the
be-
drainage
It'll
issues.
still be primarily floodplain.
Yeah.
So you don't want to put pavers in the floodplain.
Yeah, but
On the left in the survey with the aerial view, it's hard to tell, but there's not really any storm infrastructure on site. All of the flows are currently flowing off site, and there's also a swale at that southern corner. And then there's two inlets in that access drive between Gale and 8th. So we would be adding additional storm infrastructure.
Okay. Yeah, I was wondering where all the drainage is going, not during flood conditions, but how are you all handling the drainage on site during non-extreme flood?
That wire's turned off.
I think it wouldn't be typical to do it in a floodplain, but I think for the reasons you noted, it does have some unique characteristics and qualities to the site itself. So I think it's a valid question if there is an ability to do that. And I understand Mr. Mishu's response on we're not really compensating for cut, and if we're not for cut, then is the compensation or the mitigation valuable? I do think for this site, and if you've said they already go above and beyond, it would be really nice to have that included within this of just documenting what is above and beyond the code requirements as a measure to say, we understand the unique parameters of this, but there is an opportunity to at least take a site that's appears to be almost fully impervious and doesn't have any storm infrastructure to add some perviousness to it, add some landscape to it that's above the requirement as kind of a measure to at least have some mitigation for the proposed request of uncompensated fill.
Can you to build on that, share your grading plan? Do you have that on your tablet there to put on the screen, or Rob, do you have that with the packet?
This is the grading plan here. And would you
zoom in? Is there a way for you to?
I don't know. I don't think there is.
Yeah.
It's hard to tell, but with the raising the building, we would be proposing a retaining wall along the property, along Franklin Pike and along that access drive. So as I mentioned, access to the site would stay the same. We are proposing some traffic improvements at that intersection, adding a crosswalk across the access aisle, widening that access aisle as well. But there is a retaining wall along that eastern side and north side.
And all of the areas to the east of the drive lane, which are currently impervious, will be open space as well. So there will certainly be more pervious space, more open space here than we have today.
You don't have that number, do you? Current impervious versus proposed.
I don't know. And again, the reason I didn't have those numbers prepared is because we were sort of focused on the flood impact, and that doesn't have a direct bearing on that. So,
by the way, are we working towards a motion?
I'm curious on there's another building at the intersection of Gale Lane and Franklin Road, and it seems to be on that same grade, on that same level. How will it be affected? And I think it's a liquor store. I can't remember. George Jones used to ride his tractor to it. I remember that. I think it's the white one now. I remember it's on the same elevation as the old H.G. Hill. So what will happen to it?
I mean, there's no proposed changes to that building, and the changes that we're proposing on our site won't have any impact to the flood elevations at that site. So I'd say the short answer is there won't be any changes.
You'll just be a foot higher than they will.
Say it one more time.
The floodplain drops pretty significantly through there.
Okay.
It drops several feet as it follows Browns.
All right.
I think it's on the map included. There's the two tick marks are about 3 feet apart from each other when they go through the apartment.
Okay, so that won't. Okay. And plus, you'll have the retaining wall to hold back anything else.
Okay. And the whole site, of course, won't be raised 1 foot above the base flood elevation. Just the building will be. That's right.
I know you're deliberating.
Yeah.
Commissioner Oliver stated additional TDUs or something. Is that something that you're going to put in the conditions, because I think the applicant said they were going to do that anyway. I don't know if you guys are going to say staff ensure it happens or ensure it happens at a 10% or 25%. If staff, I would just say if you're going to ask for additional TDUs, that you would give us some guidance to, so that way we could ensure that your wishes are being met.
I don't know how to put a metric on it.
I know that we've seen a percentage like that before. I know Metro Properties have a percentage, where they say take the ordinance and, enhance it by 20%.
Do you have to get a variance for parking?
No.
There's maximums.
There's a lot of
Which is a whole another discussion.
I would make a motion to approve it with the condition of working with staff to ensure that the proposed landscape includes provisions that there's, I would say the target's 20% more TDU on the property than what's required by ordinance, and to enhance the landscape as a mitigation measure.
I see a nod from Shamishu, so that's good guidance.
And I saw a nod from the applicant as well.
Great. Check. All right, we have a motion. Is there?
Yeah, I would also like to say that the volume of uncompensated fill is somewhat conceptual. And so if their final design is 5 cubic feet more, I mean, we had somebody steal our uncompensated fill one time. So, or, it's hard. There needs to be flexibility.
Yeah, I think we've
The
given
intent is to take away.
Would you add a 10% variance to that?
Yeah, I mean,
think that's what we've done in the
just
past.
knowing that it's not to the T as far as the final application, because they'll develop these further.
Say up to 10,000.
Yeah.
Any guidance on the?
I feel like you've done 10% before. I know we had a Shelby Park. There was a Metro Parks project that did some uncompensated fill, and I think that was 10% or 15% threshold.
We understand what the commission is telling staff.
Okay.
If there's a tolerance that's changed by a few, we understand.
Right.
If for some reason we come to find out that there is a substantial indifference, we'd be more than happy to come back to the commission.
Okay. All right, so no need to amend the motion.
I think it would be helpful to have that as a condition, but
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
15%.
yeah, just the condition that they do not exceed the requested volume by more than 10%.
Oliver.
So I'll add a condition to my motion to not exceed the requested volume of uncompensated fill by more than 15% without coming back to the commission.
Okay. Motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded. Any other discussion?
Are you looking at me?
You're biting your tongue. It's obvious.
No, I just, I appreciate the 1 foot above freeboard, above base flood elevation, to improve the reduce the flood risk on this ahead of time so that there's not a lot of back and forth on that. So.
Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Thank you. Great analysis. Very interesting.
Thank you.
Okay. 3 down. Is it 1 to go? Yes. Nashville Distillery. You are still in the crowd. Please come on up and we'll let the other folks vacate. And I'm hearing calls for a break, so we'll take a 5-minute break. Sorry about that. Yep, great. Go, go, go.
We've never had an application with 5 engineers and 3 companies.
I was about to tell
I know. Yeah.
Yeah. Disappeared. Hey, it was in the closet. I'll call the Stormwater Management meeting back to order. And we will resume with our last case of the day. That's the Nashville Distillery. The applicant is at the stand, and I think he knows the procedure. And is that correct? Any questions? Okay.
We're good.
I will start the clock after all the introductions.
I'll introduce the case.
Oh, I'm sorry. We got to introduce case. Yep. Sorry about that.
Case number 4 on the agenda, 2026-00008, the Nashville Distillery, 4105 Whites Creek Pike. APN is 049-000-31900. Inspectors NPDES, Council District 1, Joy Kimbrough. Applicant's request, continuous mowing and maintenance of portions of the floodway and floodway buffer, modified location of buffer signage. Appellant is the Nashville Distillery, represented by Delta Civil Engineering, PLLC. Comments, Stormwater staff. Staff does not support mowing of or parking in the floodway. Codes, no comment provided. Planning, no comment provided. Greenways, any use of the greenway easement, greenway trailhead, greenway trail, and shared parking area is subject to applicable agreements, rules, regulations, policies, and laws.
All right. With that, I'll let you start introducing and start the clock after that.
All right, I'm Caleb Paul with Delta Civil Engineering. I'm joined by Mark and Tanya, the owners of the Nashville Distillery, and Bill, their general manager.
Great.
So we're representing the Nashville Distillery, requesting a renewal and reissuance of an expired variance to mow and maintain the buffer and floodway areas, which comprise about half of their property. They own a 6-acre parcel within the overall Fontenelle historic property, which if you've lived in Nashville for any amount of time, you're probably familiar with. Prior applications to this body have been made multiple times by a single owner, but the properties that comprise the Fontenelle have since been sold off to several individual owners, of which our applicant is one. Some background on why we're here today. The property has been the subject of a number of different development requests over the years, as well as stormwater management variance applications, most recently in 2020. The plan of development and ownership has changed several times over that interval, as have the variance requests. Mowing and maintenance of the buffer and floodway areas have been a minor part of the variance request process each time, and it's been approved multiple times by earlier commissions. In 2020, stormwater staff requested that the owner at that time compile all past variances, of which there were several. For simplicity, compile them into a single, what I'll call master variance request in, I believe, October of 2020. The master request was tied to the planned development of the overall property as a rural retreat style resort, and was assigned an expiration date of 1 year from approval of the variance. That development, as you're probably aware, did not move forward to permits. Our understanding is that the mowing and maintenance variance, which was granted originally as far back as 2010, was active and uncontested up to this point in 2020. However, because it was bundled with the other variances requested in 2020, NPDES has determined that it expired with the other variances which were approved at that time. Our client and the other Fontenelle owners nearby have been informed by NPDES, either with courtesy notifications or violations, that their ability to mow their field areas has expired, which is what brings this applicant here today. The distillery seeks to renew the variance within their area of the property to continue operations within the space, within the limits imposed by the approved SP. We are aware that the Fontenelle SP was the subject of some spirited discussion within the neighborhood over the years, although it was widely supported by many neighbors and by elected officials. We anticipate that we may have one or more neighbors here today to speak about the application. However, we would like to make it clear that the fields that are the subject of this request for events or use of the fields that are the subject of this request for events and event support uses has been repeatedly approved by Metro Council when they approved the original SP and multiple subsequent SP amendments as late as 2020. We understand that staff has received a note of support sent by Councilmember Jennifer Webb on behalf of herself and this district's current council member, Joy Kimbrough. Joy sort of deferred her involvement to Ms. Webb because Ms. Webb is familiar with the applicant and more familiar with the Fontanelle property. So she's been in frequent communication with us and is supportive of the application. We submit to you guys that this request is reflective of the SP's intent for the property and the past established pattern of use for these overbank areas of Whites Creek. We submitted it in the public and community's interest to maintain the use of this property as intended in the approved SP. In reviewing the past Stormwater Management Commission minutes when the previous design team came before this body, the only points of concern which were raised consistently about the mowing and maintenance of the buffer specifically, because there were other variances requested at that time that actually involved disturbances and placement of fill and other things within buffers or floodways. The only points of concern that were specific to mowing and maintenance had to do with establishing and following a plan for maintaining healthy vegetation within these spaces during and after their use for events or parking. Past conditions of approval included a requirement for a buffer management plan to be reviewed by stormwater staff. In an effort to go above and beyond past applications, we've prepared and provided this written plan as part of our application to you all. It includes or addresses requirements for aeration of the ground, stabilization of any bare soil areas that emerge, coordination of event plans with predicted weather conditions, among other concerns voiced in previous Stormwater Management Commission meetings. Repeatedly, as we familiarize ourselves with the history of the Fontanelle development, we've heard complaints about the previous owner's inability to follow through with their commitments to the city or to this body even. However, our client is not a master developer or the master owner or someone whose large-scale vision may or may not pan out. They currently own the property. They're actively operating their business there. They're established, they're eager and willing to cooperate with the community and with the requirements of their unique situation. With that, we respectfully request a renewal of this limited variance, and we'll make ourselves available for questions later.
Great. You've got 4.5 minutes. Anybody else need to speak in your panel? Okay. All right. With that, I'll close the applicant's presentation, open it up for public comment. Is there anybody here to speak in favor? Yes, if you would please come to the podium, and may have to use the one that the applicant's using for the mic to work. Oh, you fixed it. Wonderful. Yes. If you would introduce yourself, address, and I'll give you 2 minutes.
Okay. My name's Elise Hudson. I live at 4601 Whites Creek Pike. I have been in the area since 2010, so just a year after the original Fontanelle SP, and so I've been part of those discussions for more than 15 years now. Couple of points I'd like to point out. This application is not just about mowing. This is about parking and events that needs to go through the SP process and should be aligned with what the SP says today. So I would challenge that some of this actually needs to go back to an SP. There's been much consternation about the mowing and parking in these fields for well over a decade. The neighbors who live especially right there along Fontanelle are the ones that will get flooded the most if that area becomes, has any impact to it whatsoever. There hasn't really been any community outreach about this. We found out by the signs going up. I would really invite the applicants to work with groups like the Whites Creek Watershed Alliance or the Friends of Whites Creek, saying, hey, this is coming, so we don't see it and are like, what the heck is going on? There's been, some of the things that they argue about hardship in this instance. They bought the property as is. I don't think that there's a hardship argument to be made here at all. We sent flooding videos and pictures. We've had them for many years. Anytime it rains like it did like about a month and a half ago, that whole area really does flood. It's a very sensitive area.
20 seconds.
Yeah. And then, like I said, I think we're already just kind of learning each other, and we want you to succeed. So please know that, because we want that area to be what it was intended to be back in the other days. But I think that there's a little more work that we need to do here just to understand some of that history and not just say, hey, nobody had any problems with that. We're good to go. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for making the trip in today. Anybody else? All right. With that, Logan, any letters?
And we had a couple of, maybe 3 or 4 letters in opposition, and then the letter that Mr. Paul mentioned about from Councilmember Jennifer Frensley-Webb.
All right.
On behalf of Joy Kimbrough.
All right. That's been in the record. I'll close public hearing and open it up for conversation. Just to recap, the group of variances was the one that was related to what you're requesting today. There was a previous individual variance for this same area on the site, or was it for a broader area?
Logan can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think all previous requests had to do with the overall property. And typically, I hesitate to call the mowing and maintenance a footnote to the variances, but usually it went with much larger requests like disturbance within the buffers, uncompensated floodway fill or floodplain fill, among other things.
Yeah, I believe that's correct. I think it's always been multiple parcels, but there was one common owner between those parcels, and now there's multiple owners between the 3 parcels.
Okay. So are we, I mean, is there a specific variance that was tied to this parcel that we are?
Yeah.
Right, but as far as the work that we did previously, and like, did it apply to exactly what they're asking for now on that parcel? Or is this a completely new area and extents?
I'm not.
I guess, how do you mean? Because the 2020 variance covered exactly what we're asking for, which is to mow and maintain that space to continue its use as intended in the SP.
Was a permit never issued? Is that why it expired?
They just never went forward with the development. That was that owner. Yeah, sold it or ended up selling it to them. I don't know what.
After a year of issuance or something.
Yeah, I don't even know that they actually got a grading permit issued.
That's correct.
Okay.
And I mean, Logan can correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that if the mowing and maintenance itself had not been wrapped in 2020, it would probably still be considered active. I believe that's the nuance I understood from legal when they reviewed this with NPDES.
Okay.
And the slide up now shows the previous variances disturbance plan. I think this D2 area, maybe the D1.
Yes. That's in the SP.
What can you summarize your mitigation for the proposed request?
We're not offering any specific mitigation for a couple of reasons. One is we're trying to view this as merely a continuation of a pattern of use that has merely lapsed momentarily. Secondly, they're not proposing any development with this, so there's not like a planting plan that we could amend to add more trees or something. And thirdly, we're trying to mirror the previous requests that were approved by this group, none of which included any mitigation that was associated with the mowing and maintenance aspect of the request. It was always to offset disturbance, physical disturbance within the floodway or buffers, if that makes sense.
The area is currently being maintained, right? You just had notification to stop.
That's correct, yeah, up until the notification to stop, yeah. And I think that's true for all of the neighbors along the creek. There's maybe 3 or 4 different owners now that the property's been sold off.
So people park immediately to the north. People park to the north, and do they need to come and do the same thing?
The other properties of the fund, yeah, they would be asking for the same thing eventually. This is just the first one that's making that request, but I think all 3 owners are gonna eventually try to make the same request from you, should this be granted.
So there's an SP that allows parking. There was a plan with other development, but the other elements were never built.
Correct.
And so the grading permit was never issued since there was no work to be done. Therefore, the prior approval lapsed
For the mowing, yeah.
for mowing. But this has already been considered once. Was there mitigation contemplated at that time that,
Yeah, that's kind of what
you know, like,
I was asking. I was kind of wondering as well, because I know the request is for mowing and maintenance, but is it not also to use that buffer for event activities and parking and everything else? Because it's more than just saying we want to mow it some. We want to actually use it and manage it in a different way. Is that not, would that not be required as a part of the variance?
I'm going to go back and make a guess based on what I remember that happened many moons ago. I think the first mowing and maintenance was approved at one time, but they did have a plan. It was actually considered disturbance even though they weren't paving it. Because they want to park in the floodway, it came before the committee, and I think it was approved initially for just a few events with the condition that they were going to have some sort of maintenance plan to fix ruts, aerations, and a whole bunch of other things.
Yeah.
And then I think this one actually, not the distillery, but the other area north of here, I think they ended up coming back again and again and again. And they came back and said, we know you originally only approved so many variances or so many uses or events, but it was so wildly successful is their term that they want to do more events. But that was approved under a larger plan that had mitigation. And I think now, and like I said, I'm going to look to the applicant to verify, but I think now it's supposed to be an unmanaged vegetation, which means that they can't park on it. So they're asking to manage the vegetation, which will allow them the actual use of parking.
That's correct. I can clarify also that the SP contains specific requirements for hosting events. It doesn't have any limitations in it that I could find about where those events are hosted on property. But it contains limitations on attendance, limitations on frequency, requirements for traffic control plans above a certain threshold, particularly for ticketed events. So there's a pretty robust set of requirements that would be enforced by the zoning administrator if and when an event permit is filed for on this property. So the SP in 2020 contemplated the use of the buffer areas for parking and for community-oriented event space. And that was why the board at that time, or the commission at that time, approved the mowing and maintenance of it, was to facilitate that. So there's been a lapse in that variance, but this applicant is seeking to do the same things under the SP.
I can't verify about the events. I know at least the commission had a number of events that they had maxed out on. And another point of clarification, being that this is an SP, I'm not really sure that the zoning administrator will do anything. I think it will be probably the planning's SP department that will probably govern.
Yeah, that's true.
Is there a max number of events that you have indicated in the management plan that you will, that you're proposing to utilize this area for? I didn't see that, but I may have missed it.
No, not in our management plan. We're going to follow the SP's guidance on that.
Does the SP have a max number of events that you can host in the buffer zone?
It has a maximum. It doesn't speak to where on the property any of the events can be held, but it does have a maximum number of events above a certain size. Below a certain size, community-oriented events like farmers markets and flea markets, things of that nature that might be held in the space, it doesn't have a limitation on the number of those. It does have a limitation on hours for any events and decibel levels.
I'm a little concerned that we don't have the SP in front of us to know what specifics are included there, and you can't give us the specifics on the events and those things.
I can pull it up if that would be helpful.
Some of those thresholds are just important, I think, for these kind of specific areas, and I think they're more detailed than maybe what the planning department may look at from a site zoning perspective, because it can get if they're not there, then it can easily be mismanaged, I think, whether it's you guys or someone else, because the events can run and you kind of have a continuous event almost because you have one there every 3 days or every 5 days or whatever it is. And then it kicks in, your 90-day event window of if there's more consecutive events than 90 days and stuff gets left out there because it's really for the next event. And I've just seen it happen before whenever you get into these operation agreements. And I think clarity there is really important to ensure that both sides understand how it works so that there's not an issue down the road with how these are intended to function.
Understood. The plan that we submitted, the written plan we submitted, nothing like that has been submitted previously when this was approved. So that we hope that the board sees that as a gesture of their interest in complying with the requirements. Previous boards have expressed concern about floatable management, things like that, where things are left out there. So that is addressed in the written document about removal of that after events and anchoring. So there is something that their events group would be held to, and that stormwater staff could look back at and determine is enforceable.
I'll ask one or make one more comment while I wait on the other commissioners here. I think it would be important to establish a maximum number of mowings per year. I know that there's an approximate number in there, but I think a max number would be important. I do appreciate that there's a comment that it is intended to be maintained as native vegetation. I think the management plan should include limitations on or prohibition on using any kind of fertilizers and similar sorts of things because of the location of where this is, so that those aren't a part of the management practice. And I also think the multiple events planned for 90 days should be far less. And if you are hosting that many events in there, you really need to get in there and aerate it far before 3 months because it could go the whole summer, and then you aerate it one time, and that's when you probably need it the most. So I think the frequency of that really needs to be looked at to make sure it's effective. And
We're definitely open to amending the submitted plan as the commission sees fit. Another angle that the owner would like for me to mention is they've observed a large number of poisonous snakes in this area, copperheads specifically. And they are obviously able to maintain up to that zone 1 buffer that's out there currently. And when they do maintain and mow it, they frequently find chopped up copperheads and rattlesnakes. So there is a public safety element that I think is worth considering. This is an area that, for better or worse, is intended by the council for hosting and supporting events at the Fontenelle property, either individually or at large. And on top of that, we have a frequented greenway space that is used by this applicant's patrons and by the general public. So there's definitely some public safety concern with leaving it unmaintained for long periods of time.
David, how close is Parks maintained next to the Greenway?
At this particular location, there's a 3.5 foot shoulder on either side. I can't tell you specifically whether they know 2.5 feet or 3.5 feet. But they do maintain the shoulders.
One thing that I think is kind of missing from the plan is some signage about the buffers and maintaining the buffers, especially with that many patrons there. Education is an opportunity about the importance of those. I didn't see that. Did I miss
Well, they do have existing buffer signs.
Yeah.
So their proposal is to move them across the greenway.
And that was a staff recommendation as well, not something that was in our original request.
But I know we've also requested like kiosks.
They've got these 4 alternatives that are on the opposite side of the Greenway.
Okay.
Is this like a, is this mowed with a bush hog, or is this mowed with a riding lawnmower that's 2.5, 3 inches tall?
I'll let the applicant speak to that.
So it was originally bush hogged, but we have mowed it a couple times down a little further. All of the neighbors have, just to help mitigate the snake issue. I do have pictures of the snakes. It actually was brought to our attention by some of the people using the greenway. Actually went to the neighbor, Trey, next door, who owns the inn, and was complaining about the snakes. So for us, for me anyway, I have no events planned for that space other than occasional farmers market, which will be walking on it. My issue really is the liability right now of these snakes.
Unfortunately, we like snakes on this commission because they're part of the wildlife and the natural habitat that we promote. There's might be another board for animal control, so it wouldn't be something that we'd consider here. I'm sorry, but from a water quality and standpoint, that's what we look at. I understand it's just not under our purview. So.
And I think that really speaks to what the purpose of the buffer and why one of the many reasons why they're not mown and managed, because we don't want to mow and manage it to keep the wildlife from being able to be in it, especially with its proximity to the stream corridors and the other ecological aspects to it. So unfortunately, it's creating a bigger problem by trying to manage a condition where there's wildlife there, because I think they're there for a reason. And I think that's one of the concerns of kind of establishing this as a practice. I think that's also why we're asking about mitigation, because understanding that it was something that may have been approved and in what detail and how, I think is uncertain, because we weren't on, at least I wasn't on this commission at that point. So I can't really speak to the detail of what was included in that request and approved, but taking this part out and mowing all the way to the greenway without any mitigation, I think just makes it a little bit more challenging.
Mind it, but it is a liability to have these. There were at least 15 to 20 killed of poisonous snakes. And I'm just saying, if Metro wants to take on that liability, please feel free. But I'm not.
That's animal control. That's not us. I'm sorry. With all respect. I guess. Do you own other parcels along the stretch that were part of the original variance?
No, just this one.
Yeah.
We're all talking. All of us neighbors have kind of come together.
Yeah, I'm assuming that we'll probably see them as well if this gets approved, and yeah, we'll be back to okay.
Right, and we understand the position that the commission is in. You have to look at this with fresh eyes because it's before you as a variance, but to deny the ability of these landowners to mow and maintain that essentially defeats the purpose of a major purpose of this SP as envisioned by council, which is why we have the support of the current and past council members here for this request, just to continue the pattern of use that this sort of community feature needs to have.
And there was no comment from planning on this?
Maybe we could go back and ask a little bit more dialogue, and maybe we could approach planning. And it's not traditional that they come to these meetings, but maybe this is a special one that we could consider talking to them, maybe have that clarification. And I think maybe, and I'm not a voting member, I'm not a commission member, but it sounds like while we are working on that level, maybe the applicant needs to find some sort of mitigation to be proposing instead of none whatsoever. And then maybe if they're going back and we're bringing planning back, or at least having a little bit more detailed comments, maybe we could have a better understanding. Maybe the citizens could come back and speak, as well as more council member dialogue as well.
Did somebody put a stop work order on them? Or what? I mean, it seems like, I would like to have a little bit more information just on, repairs of ruts, or how do we keep sediment from going down? At the same time, the neighbors need to somewhat have a joint plan, because they're driving across those to get to this, I would assume, because you can't drive across the stormwater features. But, in general, the intended purpose is to use it. But if we don't vote on it today, then what happens? It grows up for 30, 60, 90, 120 days and all,
That is the intent of the buffers, is to have it, at least the zone 1 buffer is to have it as an unmanaged vegetation. So that is the actual intent of the zone 1 buffer.
I'm not trying to undermine prior approvals either.
I think I'm sorry to interrupt you, Jay. When I first looked at this, I think the angle that was most persuasive to me about the best way to move forward was the fact that this variance, in my opinion, in my reading of the precedent here, this variance would still be active if, and again, this is not like staff set a trap for them, but staff requested that in 2020, they include all previous variances in a master request. At the time, I don't think that they had a particular need to renew the mowing and maintenance. But because it was wrapped into that variance that was tied to the resort, it basically lapsed this established pattern of mowing and maintenance, that variance for every property in the SP. So we're hoping that a limited request can be approved.
I mean, is there not a continuation of nonconformity in essence? Or is it, I'm just puzzled by this whole situation. Honestly.
Well, I'm struggling with the hardship. The SP does not create grounds for hardship ruling for approval necessarily based on our requirements. I'd like more information really, because, that buffer, the area of proposed mowing, does not have to be, it could be 150 foot, it could be 200 foot from the top of bank. Like, that seems pretty arbitrary.
That was what was approved by previous commission.
Okay, but
as a condition.
But we're also seeing more intense storm events, more flooding, those things. So, what worked then doesn't necessarily work now.
Yes,
and I guess I would like to see, if you're going to mow and people are going to be parking and using that space up to a buffer that's designated, I would like to see some signage there of why that's not mowed and those things, not on the other side of the greenway that people aren't necessarily parking at and walking by and those things if they're not accessing the greenway, but they're there for an event. I don't know, this is unique in the struggle, and I agree it'd be great to hear more about the perspective from planning, and just, I'm not a fan of poisonous snakes. I don't want anyone to get bit or injured, but as Commissioner Oliver said, there's a reason we have the buffers and the space to allow the wildlife to be there. So this is a tough one.
One question, looking at the existing aerial, and it looks like your plan is proposing to have that continuous mow and maintenance all the way to the greenway path. It looks like there's a buffer zone approximately between your dashed black line and the greenway. Are you proposing to remove all that vegetation to make it grass or something?
I think that line may actually be the 100-foot standoff that was established at the previous variance. So
I think
we would not likely mow past that 100-foot where parking would be allowed.
I think it'd be helpful to amend and include some of that detail in there. I think the things that really worry me is that we have a plan in place and then someone's out there mowing it to 3 inches because of whatever it may be, snakes or something else. And then a lot of the operation, or because more or less it's like a farm field and you're bush hogging it like a farm field. And that, I think, has a certain level of review and probably acceptance. But I think, layering in the management, lacking some information, I think, on kind of the events and how many and how those relate to this kind of unique use of this space, and a little bit more information about how it's managed to reflect its proximity to the creek, I think would be helpful and give us more clarity on how to ensure that what we're approving maintains, I guess, the integrity. And then there's also something that we can point to establish what happens next. Because I don't even know how you get to this spot to park because of your detention and your water quality against your parking lot and your building. So I assume you have to come around through someone else's property. So I guess it's going to come.
Yeah, I can clarify that.
Okay.
That we understand that they have no intention of parking in it in the immediate term, and they understand that to actually physically get cars there, they're going to have to coordinate with their neighbors, who are also in a similar position.
Yeah.
In the short term, their goals are to have community-oriented events like farmers markets and similar events in this space that could be accessed with carts and wagons and people walking on foot from the parking lot. So the fact that we included some literature about the parking in the buffer management plan is just contemplating, if this variance is granted, that there is a plan for how to address that parking when the plan is further fleshed out with how to do that in cooperation with their neighbors. But that's not an immediate desire is to park there. It's just to use that space as intended in the SP. And to be clear, I think all of the concerns that you guys have voiced, I think we're open to, particularly if you all were open to making some of those conditions of approval that we could coordinate with staff, like signage, amendments to the written buffer plan. On the events, I think I would like to know more about your concerns on that. You all have a right to examine any angle of this that you want to, but the quantity of events, my assumption was that would be sufficient with what council had approved, because it's not like this is an archaic SP. This is just a few years ago. If that's something where you all need to see those numbers and you want us to further reduce them, that would be something we'd like to understand before accepting a deferral or something else.
Yeah, I think sometimes, the council and the planning comments are hard to, without digging into them and understanding, because for all I know, they said, sure, you can have events there as long as the Stormwater Commission approved you having them there. So they're, it could, and I'm not sure what those are. So that may be, I'm just not familiar with what the details of the SP are, and
Right.
can't really speak to them.
So the SP was approved, as I understand it, when the mowing and maintenance variance was active. So the SP was approved with the presumption that parking would occur there as frequently as events did. And the designer responsible for the SP and the resort at the time is John Haas, who's no longer with us. And he was intimately involved in coordinating with this commission and with the council at the time. So I believe that stormwater staff, this commission, and the council all had a role in establishing the schedule and the quantity of events.
So I feel like it sounds like we may not have enough information, because and I don't think we want to put 10 conditions on this of, for a possible approval or not. And I think it might be worthwhile to consider a deferral, and you come back with the specific language from the SP, and also, where's your plan for events and access and some of those things to address some of the concerns that have been raised. Is that something you're interested in?
I think we may be forced to, if you all are not in a position where we would have support. In terms of your concern about events, I think we would just need to understand what those concerns are. If you're just looking I'd like to see the SP conditions in front of me so that we can talk about them as a group. So that we could bring up right now, if that would be helpful.
I was asking Logan if there were conditions on the previous variances that were granted that had anything to do with Oh, go ahead. You found it.
I don't know. I don't have the decision letter, but I do have the staff comments for stormwater. And our staff comments on the 2020 variance were staff would recommend that proposed buffer areas for parking be consolidated or lessened as possible to the minimum area needed, with remaining buffer areas left to function as undisturbed riparian buffers. Staff would recommend against approvals for new special event activities within the site stream buffers. They could lead to pollutant loading, buffer area compaction, and additional turf grass areas within the buffer. That was for the whole parcel, not just this specific parcel. So.
Yeah, I think what I'm afraid of is that we can't just carte blanche say, okay, mow it, park it. You're going to, not that you would do this, but not maintain it. The quality of that buffer gets completely destroyed. It's a dust field. We completely lose our grass. There needs to be some control and some, maintenance agreement alongside if this does go towards an approval, because what could happen is the rest of the neighbors come to us for the same variance, and now the precedent is set, and the whole thing is parked without any sort of maintenance plan to preserve more or less the way that it is now after you bush hog it. I think that's what we want to maintain. And so there needs to be, that's kind of your mitigation plan is long-term maintenance.
I think that's a good idea. And I think our current buffer management plan that you guys have in front of you could very easily, with some language from staff and from Metro Legal, be turned into a recorded maintenance agreement like we would typically do on a project.
And then I'd love to see some opportunity to improve. I don't know what the quality of the Whites Creek bank is, but if there's opportunity for improvement of Whites Creek to some degree, does your property line go on the other side of the creek as well, or is that another parcel of the whole campus?
It appears to go to the middle of the creek, but perhaps where the middle of the creek was when these properties were established many years ago. So I think it's actually just to the west of the creek.
Yeah, I don't know what the scale is, but it looks like we have at least 1,000 feet of creek, that could be improved if there is a need for that. Because what I'm afraid of is every field that we see on that screen, every owner is going to come to us for parking. And now, this case sets the precedent for everything that comes after it. So that's why you're seeing a lot of consternation right now.
What if you had a condition that no motorized vehicles be parked on it while it's being maintained under the current variance?
But they don't have a current variance. It's expired.
If we approved one.
But I think they are going to, they're going to park motorized vehicles on it, right?
But not right now.
We have no one.
Not the current intention, no. But again, these applicants don't have a current plan of development, but they are cooperating with their neighbors. And there may be a time in the future where particularly the actual owner of the larger Fontenelle property wants to resurrect the amphitheater. It's ironic that we were here with the amphitheater project earlier, because this is a property of a similar nature that has similar, water features that have to kind of be worked around. And so we're trying to dovetail with how that was done in the past. Within the context of this smaller portion of the property. But there's definitely the possibility that they will want to park there in the future, but it's not part of our current intent. We provided the framework for how to treat the property if and when parking can occur there, and that's in the buffer management plan, but it's not an immediate need. The immediate need is to not receive notices of violation for mowing and maintaining what's been mowed and maintained for many decades.
I guess everybody else has been served upstream and downstream.
I issued notices of noncompliance that are outstanding and pending additional disturbance. There would be a notice of violation is our next procedure.
But I'm assuming the other properties there also have been receiving the same.
All three of the former Fontenelle properties have received notices of noncompliance.
The property to the south, that's not part of the campus, or is that part of it as well?
No, just to the north and to the east.
So that field on the south side is not being mowed?
To the south was not part of a grading permit, so I don't have.
It's a house.
Yeah.
Traditionally speaking,
right.
if you have a property that predated the regulations, we wouldn't just randomly But once you kick in significant redevelopment or a grading permit, that's when the buffers kick in.
Mm-hmm.
So if, you had a house built in the 70s and all of a sudden we come up with a floodway, we wouldn't automatically say, you can't live in the house anymore, you got to tear it down and raise it up. Or we wouldn't say, hey, the floodway now, goes beyond your property. You can't even cut the grass in front of your property until something significant, like significant redevelopment or a grading permit.
So because this was rezoned, that this was an SP, then, yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
I mean, so somebody built that pond. What did the grading plan say that when that pond was built for the parking lot? I mean, it follows the buffer lines.
The detention area.
Yeah. I mean, did it identify buffers or?
Yeah, with the permit 2009-00150, the buffer zone 1 and 2 are both established.
And the 2010 variances that were obtained for mowing and maintenance were associated with that grading permit application as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Have the maps changed? Go ahead.
Well, how are they not allowed to mow and maintain it if that was a variance associated with that pond?
There was, I think it was an after the fact. I don't think it was established with the permit.
I do know at one time, prior commission had 71 variances over here. And I think that was not 71, but there's been plenty. And I think that was causing confusion with the various different property owners because they started to sell things off. I think there was like a Better Homes and Gardening or some sort of magazine that bought a house up there and had a lease on it for a couple of years. It just got confusing, and I think it was just deemed best to consolidate just because there was getting a lot of violations for people going above and beyond.
But I think, Jay, what you're saying is if they had a variance to mow and maintain it, and if they were mowing and maintaining it, assume that variance was in effect. And so how would it have expired, I guess, if
they went for a new one that consolidated all prior approvals also, but did it void and vacate?
Right. The others, right.
We asked that exact question, and Logan, correct me if I'm wrong, you got with Metro Legal and determined that, and NPDS I know did as well, and determined that they felt that the expiry of that 2020 package of variances put the kibosh on all of them.
That's correct, yeah. Because it's a different ownership and because the grading permit wasn't expired, I guess.
Does the variance follow the owner? Does it follow the property?
The variance would, I guess I could think about that, but I think at this stage, they've come before you to request the variance. There's not a variance on the property. So I don't think that would be necessarily relevant to the discussion before the commission.
But where I'm going is they came before us with a variance request that includes this information about using it for events and a management plan for it and all those sorts of things, which I agree is a new variance. But if they're simply also needing to mow and maintain it as they have, and then come back to get these details further clarified in their enhanced request, I would say, out there, then is the current ability to mow and maintain it as it is. And I'm looking at the aerial, and there's a nice buffer zone between the greenway and the field that's mowed, and you could tell there's a height difference between the zones that it's mowed, and so there's things out there I think that are better than what you're proposing, which I think is one of our is one of my concerns. But if that variance is still usable, then you could bush hog it like you have been without needing additional approval. But I guess that's the question.
The only thing I'm hung up on is parking on it.
Yeah.
Which they're saying they don't want to do in the short term.
Can I have a point of clarification with maybe legal and Logan? Because we talked about, Logan, you and I talked about this earlier this week, maybe about, the parking and the events are permitted on the property. And the neighbor has actually already made this inquiry with a separate arm of Metro Legal because they're approaching this a different way, and they're eventually probably going to wind up back here. But I'll put them aside. The property is allowed to host events and is allowed to park in this space from a zoning and code standpoint per the SP. The only variance that we're requesting is to mow and maintain it. I don't think that hosting events there or parking there actually is part of our variance request. Is that correct, Logan?
That's not showing up. Yeah, parking is not part of the variance request.
Yeah,
But that's a use.
It's
My
a
only
use,
hang up is if it rains anytime soon, or if it's not compacted, then it's going to rut. And then now you're tearing up a buffer. And so it's, but popping up tents and having a farmer's market, I mean, that just draws attention to the creek. You could still have a little buffer strip behind the greenway. You could even cut a walking path to connect them so people could go from the greenway.
Right.
I mean, in general, I don't have a, I'm just confused by the legality of vacating prior approvals, but at the same time, I don't have a problem with farmers markets being there.
Right. Well, one of my concerns is planning has approved, there's this SP that allows for parking and events, but the variance is only asking for maintenance. But then there's the potential of doing the parking and the events. And I think that's the challenge. If the variance included, here's our plan for parking and events in the buffer zone, I think we'd have a clearer picture.
I think the legal nuance is that the entitlement to host events and park and use the space is handled by the SP. The scope of what we're asking for has only to do with, yes, planning can grant us the permission to do that. We could go park out there right now under the SP. We just can't mow it. So functionally, we're not able to park or host events or anything because the mowing and maintenance aspect of what was allowed there, according to Metro staff, has expired.
It's a bit of a legal term, though, because what does mow and maintain mean? Because if we say you can mow and maintain a buffer, does that mean you can kind of use it for anything you want to? I don't know what our purview is.
You can't pave a buffer, you can't, but zoning overrode the requirement for a dustless surface by saying they could park there and park on grass. Like zoning doesn't allow gravel parking, even though they exist everywhere. Like you have to pave it.
Yeah.
But in this case, they don't.
But is zoning approving, parking in this specific spot, or are they just saying, yes, you can host events on the property and you're allowed to park it? And I don't know if they're going to the fact of saying, where those are allowed and not allowed, or just saying those uses are allowed on the property.
Yeah, and I don't know what the historic nature of parking was. It may have been like overflow parking for the amphitheater. I don't think it was. They weren't just using it as a parking lot.
The parking on the west side was the parking for the amphitheater, and the parking on the east side was overflow because it was difficult to get cars over there. So the area of the property that we're talking about was actually the principal parking for amphitheater events. But it was also contemplated for community-oriented events. The SP references those type of events, and that was presumed to be hosted at numerous different locations on the property as needed.
Well, I think, maybe channeling Ms. Simpson here. We have to evaluate the variance request based on, a clearly identified hardship for the site. And loss of revenue and those things are not allowable hardships. And kind of go based on what has been proposed, not what what planning has approved for the site necessarily. And rattlesnakes and wanting to host events is not necessarily, in my opinion, a hardship associated with the site.
I think the hardship is that not continuing the variance here would essentially set a precedent that the stormwater regulations preclude the use of the property that was approved by the SP, because now you cannot host any sizable events on the property because the amphitheater is within the floodway buffers on the other side. So that would be sort of the precedent is if we're not able to mow and maintain this space, and that's applied across the property, many of the uses that were approved by council and by successive commissions for the property would no longer be viable.
I think I would take issue with that just as a hardship listed, given that it's a specific use requiring the hardship. I believe hardship is generally tied to the land.
And so to recap, so this is just has a lot of nuance to it. So to recap, in my mind, they came in for a new plan, whatever year that was, I don't recall, and they said instead of adding on a new variance, why don't you just consolidate them all into this one variance request so that it's cleaner? Those other variances consolidated existed and were approved, as I understand them. And then whatever that plan was didn't go forward. So it nullified all of the variances because they consolidated them, even though they were approved variances that were added into the new request. And so because the development didn't go forward, it nullified everything that had been previously approved, which creates a little bit of a unique condition.
Yeah, and that's where, I was curious to know what the conditions were of the approval of that variance. And we have some valid conditions that need to be considered as part of this dialogue, I think. And there may have been a broader mitigation plan to support that use and the disturbances of the buffers that, help to improve the watershed and the stream and things of that nature. I don't know what that was. So
if you went to the legalities, and Metro Legal would have to chime in on this, easements run with the land, and if variance runs with the land, you're actually vested in your purchase. So
yes, sir.
How would that relate legally with the transfer of deed of a subparcel?
That's always been my understanding of variances as well, is that they ran with the land. And Logan, I don't recall there being a condition in the 2020 approval that was tied to a change of ownership. My understanding, and again, correct me, staff, if I'm wrong, is that the legal nuance here is they feel that all of the 2020 variances have expired, inclusive of ones that were granted previously.
My recommendation would be to look at what's being asked before the commission. And if there's a legal issue that the applicant wants to undertake, that they should do that privately or outside of the commission.
Yeah, I'd agree. The commission's ruling on what's in front of it today. I think that's a different argument than coming before this commission with a variance request.
Well, I think the parking and the event thing is what is just the hang up, because I think event is such a broad term. It could mean a farmer's market. It could mean you come out here and tent the whole thing and have, thousands of people. It's just such a vague term that I think some clarity around events of this size are allowed, on whatever frequency, and events of whatever the categories are would really help provide clarity to say this isn't going to turn into a space that is, utilized for events and parked on or whatever on a regular basis, just because of that ambiguity.
Would you be comfortable with us pulling up the SP right now? I mean, it's not, the conditions about event management on the SP are not so dense that we couldn't look at them together within 5 minutes. I'd hate to delay a month for something we could pull up right here.
I mean, I can't get my internet to work. It just spins. I'm trying to pull it up. Same. Yeah. It's been terrible.
It's almost like the other owners need to retain your services to do a comprehensive plan, because they're all going to come before us, and there needs to be a unified kind of approach to how we handle all these cases versus separately. I know this is just a bit unique.
They don't want to do it yet. You can't prevent him from complying.
Yeah, I guess I'd say that this application needs to be reviewed on the merits in front of it. If the commission felt like specific, requirements were necessary, they would need to look at that in the context of this application.
I understand. I mean, we can deny it, and then they'd come back with a broader plan with the rest of the parcels to have a more, like, maybe it's not all of the buffer. Maybe it's 50% of it. Maybe if there's 10 acres and they want to mow 5 acres, well, then we can talk about that and the mitigation associated with it if there's any opportunity for improvement of White's Creek. So, you know.
If this were a new application, I'd rather see a better preservation of buffer behind the greenway.
Yeah.
And some potential offsetting planting throughout there versus just a carte blanche mow.
Yeah.
But
And that is something then would kind of set a precedent for the future adjacent
you're
ownership.
not going to be able to get a car over there because you got to drive across the detention pond unless you go through the neighbor who's not allowed to
do that.
to mow it right now.
True.
So the threat of cars there now will be somewhat deferred.
Yeah, I mean, I understand. I mean, cars have been parking here for years, you know, for concerts when the amphitheater was around. So it's not, but, you know, I think we've pointed out some things here that could make for a stronger revisit to the commission, whether it's feedback from planning, you know, collaboration or something related to the other properties to evaluate all the parcels that will be impacted as a whole. You know, it's not a complete mow and maintenance of the buffer. It could be partial, to Commissioner Fulmer's point. So I'd like to set some precedent with this case because we know we're going to be dealing with the other ones. I'm thinking, I think this is probably a deferral. If you'd like to defer, unless there's some time, unless you're under some time constraint with needing to mow this area.
I think very likely we'll be forced to defer unless we want a denial from the sound of it. But I would like to itemize what the commission's concerns are so that we can address those when we come back. I will say, you know, it is gratifying to hear the commission is also a little confused about legal's position here on the variance having expired. So there may be a reason for this applicant to pursue that legal question further. We took it as far as we could on the, you know, engineering consultant side of things, but that may be an angle that we want to go to and see if there's an angle where we don't need to have a renewed variance. But suffice to say, if we're back here, I'd like to make sure I understand all of the angles that you all are concerned about. Number one is potentially some mitigation, whether that be additional tree plantings in the buffer or preservation of, you know, additional space beyond what's currently contemplated. Specific limitations on events that are specific to this property as opposed to the SP as a whole. Some feedback from planning. That one I'm a little confused on what planning would tell you other than reading off what's in the SP. So if there's something specific that you think planning should speak to, that we should get in touch with them, what would that be?
I mean, what's killing you is the floodway line, is the establishment of the buffer. And so if there was a way to begin the Zone 1 buffer at the back of the greenway, or 5 feet back, since there's a strip that's mowed, and then is maybe to increase that buffer a little bit, maybe that's the unmanaged strip.
I think we'd be open to that today.
No, so that's something that would make me feel better about it. And then, you know, I do like a way to get people from the greenway to whatever event might be occurring. But is there some sort of mitigation like that you could have to offset the mowing of the balance? You know, so it's hard for us to condition and throw things out that are not defined on the plan. But I think a lot of the opposition or hesitation was brought up because it is showing you're mowing all the way to the greenway. And then there was nothing in return. And so that was but I understand completely why you showed it that way, because there were previous approvals. So I'm not saying I might not have done anything differently.
Right. And to be clear, it sounds like the commission is not at all inclined or not able to consider the mitigating circumstances of past approvals and the complexity of the situation. So you all are essentially being forced to look at this as though it's anybody coming in and asking for a mowing and maintenance variance.
Because that's kind of what we're being told to do by legal.
Yeah, I think looking at the extents, just to echo and build on what Mr. Fulmer said, is, looking at a buffer zone between the greenway and your proposed mowing management area, I think would be very helpful. And even looking at the south property line, it goes all the way up to the property line. It looks like there's vegetation there now. Just being a little bit more precise about what the proposal is and what existing vegetation is left and what, mitigation that you can do to offset it would be things that we'd be looking for.
Yep. The south property line, just for your reference, that's overhanging vegetation. The greenway actually comes out to a trailhead over there.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you're hearing feedback because we've denied cases on mowing and maintaining buffers for little things like driveways going through that are 10 foot, so it's just, we try to maintain some level of consistency in how we review these cases. And now that this is, I know it's the same thing as it was before in essence, but there's probably some opportunity to look at this a little bit differently now that we have an opportunity to.
And then the couple things that we talked about, or that I spoke about with the management plan, would be things that I think would be helpful to have some more detail on this.
You remind me what those were?
I think you have that in, did you see it in the packet?
Yeah, I think it's just the frequency of the aeration after events. I think if anything, the more events you have, you look at that a little closer and narrow that window. I think the other thing that stood out as something of a concern was like establishing a max times per year that you're mowing it, and maybe even kind of alluding a little bit to the question of height and how you're mowing that, just to ensure it doesn't become a golf course kind of condition would be, I think, good things to ensure that it's managed in a way that doesn't create degradation over time.
All right, anything else? All right, you okay with deferring?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Can't remember, did we make a motion for deferring?
Probably best that there was a hearing, given there was a hearing and an agenda item on the agenda.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to defer.
Second?
Second.
Seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, see you next time. All right, with that, Logan, any other business for this meeting?
No, we'll be back at our regular place next month, so.
Okay, great. We like those chairs, they're softer. With that, I'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everybody.
All in favor?
No gavel.
Oh, I forgot.
Yeah.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.